but it just depends on the group, really.
Do you continue to get letters?
No. I would quite like to. I might send them something.
Sorry, I just have a question for, like you mentioned that some of the downside and limitations of virtually collaborating was that was quite time consuming. Did you find that there was any kind of adjustment that you had to make in, say, sort of demonstrating skills or that kind of transfer of stuff? Did you find you were working in a different way, or that there was any kind of drawback that way, or other kind of drawbacks that you haven't mentioned?
There's technical drawbacks. There's always kind of when you're programming fast enough.
Yeah.
That's it. And you have to plan a session so that you can do it on your phone sometimes if you need to. And that has happened where you just literally do it on speakerphone if your technology fails. So yeah, I think backups, that things are really, you really think about where you're trying to start and you think about where it might go, and you have to accept that there will be a lot of other potentialities in between, and you have to be really flexible and respond. If something happens, you have to adapt. And again, you have to have a relationship with the teacher so that the session doesn't collapse, that they have an idea of what the intention is, and they can keep things. It's not about being developed with them, so they understand what we're up to, and they can sustain things, and it's really a partnership. That's where they come into their own. In terms of the actual work, is different. I think you always plan 4 things, knowing you'll probably get to do 2. You know,
I'm really interested in a sort of skills transfer bit, you know, how it actually
works. Yeah.
In terms of, do you work with the teacher before saying, right, we're going to attempt to do XXX in this media, so you will need these materials in the classroom, and I will do a demonstration. I mean, is there any kind of that logistical sort of plan, or is it a bit more organic than that?
It would be half logistical plan, so half about materials, the materials bit, and logistics come after. What was good from the last session? What are we going to do next? What will we explore? What were they getting? You know, what were they excited about? So that's the first part. You know, how do we develop that interest? What did they engage with? Where can we go next now? So I would have maybe ideas at the beginning of where I ultimately think it could go, but I might sort of realise halfway through we're not going that direction. So we talk about it and figure out where it's going to go instead.
So did you find any sort of difference in like skills demonstration? Did you sort of scale back a little bit because you're visual, you know, it's just a demonstration-based thing. You don't actually get to get your hands on.
Well, an example is we did darkrooms. We created a darkroom in the classroom, which was done by experimentation with the teacher, with the children, finding the darkest space, doing lots of experiments, and then they used they did photographs, and they posted them in a light envelope, and then I developed them in my darkroom at home. And then videos, some of them being developed, and put those back online into the journal, so it's just kind of keeps feeding around and around, which is probably quite a kind of technical and awkward thing to do, but we just felt like playing with it, and we just went for it, and it worked, and we got some photographs out of it that were really exciting. And also it's about, you know, we got all the other things out of it, about light and physics and how you look at things and objects and choices. So it's all about, you know, there's always loads and loads of strands that are going, and it depends on what works, which strands you develop more, and then which ones you have to maybe let sit. And then because we've been really lucky, even though we do this year by year, the Arts Council has given us money every year. So every year you finish and don't know if you'll go again, but if you get more money, you go again. Sometimes you go back to some of those strands and say, oh, could we look at that again? That one slipped. Maybe we could use it again, or they were interested in that and we didn't have time. Can we go back and develop that?
Thank you again for presenting and seeing your presentations. But the first was just, you know, where projects come from, that very thing of, you know, what excites you, and what you mentioned those kind of core values as a person, which I never really thought before, you know, which you obviously still have while working with and for organisations, teachers, schools, many different groups. And then I guess the presentations, they kind of just conveyed that real kind of passion for what you do, and taking it in very kind of different ways that are completely built around your own interests. and neurostructures, and then working out how that can be interesting to bring people into that. And I guess then the idea of this kind of shared some strategies as well about dealing with collaboration, which is a really difficult thing to do a lot of time, and that can be because of funding, that can be because of resources, that can be because of timing. And I think the platforms that you're offering are really interesting, and also then the idea of that virtual space, I'm sure that's something that we'll see increasingly develop with this kind of work. And that's something that was really fascinating to think about. And then finally that idea of, the critic who needs to be involved or needs to experience the work in order to understand it or to critically engage with it, and if that's true and why that's true. And then just those ideas about the dissemination of this work and why it's important and how we mediate that. And I think that's just such an exciting discussion to have, and it's probably something we could talk about for another 2 hours. But I want to really thank you all for your comments and questions, and thank you again for such wonderful presentations.